Tanse, I'm Christian Achkete. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. A man is dead after a Winnipeg police officer shot him multiple times over the weekend. It happened Sunday evening near a busy shopping center on Winnipeg's West End. According to Winnipeg police, officers were on retail theft duty at a shopping center. At around 5:09 p.m., it was announced over police radio that an officer had been stabbed and a man had been shot. A video circulating on social media depicts two officers firing multiple shots at a man who falls to the ground. The man was transported to hospital and pronounced dead. The officer who was stabbed was treated for his injuries. The Independent Investigations Unit, or IIU, is now investigating the incident. WPS Acting Chief Art Stannard spoke at a press conference late Sunday evening.
That event is unfolding right now, so very limited information was that our officers were dealing with a male in the area of a bus shelter. And during this interaction, the male stabbed one of our officers in the throat with an edged weapon. At this time, officers told the male to drop his weapons, and shortly after, a use of force encounter happened, where officers discharged their weapons. CPR was given to the injured male by police, including the injured police officer. They were both conveyed to hospital. Our member is being treated at the hospital for neck injuries, throat injuries, and the suspect was pronounced deceased. We are aware of videos online, and we caution the public that they do not show the entire incident. I've said this before, and I'll say this again. Our members do not come to work to take a life.
A 17-year-old boy from the Norway House Cree Nation in northern Manitoba has died after he was shot by the RCMP. On Friday at around 1:45 a.m., RCMP officers from the Norway House detachment responded to a call about an agitated and armed male who officers located outside the residence with an edged weapon. The RCMP say he was shot after refusing to drop the weapon numerous times and advancing towards them. He was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. The youth has been identified as 17-year-old Elgin Muskego. He is now the 11th Indigenous person killed by police in Canada since August. The Manitoba Independent Investigation Unit is now looking into the matter. In a statement, Norway House Cree Nation leadership says they extend their deepest condolences to the family of the young community member who tragically lost their life. They say the event has deeply affected the community, especially with the recent loss of 23-year-old Raven Crate, who was found deceased in a home on November 12th, and 35-year-old Derek Bruce Forbister of Norway House has been arrested and charged with manslaughter in that investigation. Norway House has now established a team dedicated to ensure a thorough and independent investigation takes place for Muskego and address broader issues of drugs and violence in the community. Chief and Counsel is looking at the possibility of declaring a state of emergency. The Office of the Alberta Child and Advocate released two reports last week, their annual report on the state of youth in the child welfare system and the Calling for Change report. In those reports, Indigenous youth are still being overrepresented in annual serious injuries and deaths. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Alberta Child Advocate Terry Pelton's latest annual reports on youth in the Alberta child welfare system shows a perennial continuation of too many Indigenous youth being severely injured or dying while in the system, or shortly after leaving.
So I think what's particularly troubling is that 35 of the 48 young people were Indigenous. And so we're continuing to see an overrepresentation of systems in the lives of Indigenous young people, their families, and their communities. And I'm not making a recommendation out of this report, but I'm reinforcing previous recommendations about supporting communities to take to be supported to take their kids back.
17 of 33 youth who died aged out of the system. Pelton says the province needs to keep helping youth beyond the current age of 22 to reduce these numbers from youth aging out of the system. She says many don't have the supports youth with family supports have.
If they come home at 26 and they were evicted or lost their job, we're a safety net for them. Young people who are in the permanent care of the government don't necessarily have those family connections, which then speaks back to the importance for Indigenous young people particularly to be connected. And I've heard about some nations that are serving their young people to 26. And so if nations can start making those changes, government surely can.
According to Pelton's report, of the total 48 youth killed or seriously injured, 26 of them, over half, had the same problems.
Most of the young people in this report struggled with either mental health or substance use, or unfortunately both. And so our office has done a number of reports on the increasing deaths related to opioids and substance use. And I think the next step, because I've seen government make some positive moves towards like this virtual opioid dependency program. They're doing a lot of work to increase supports. I would just like to see more targeted supports for young people.
APTN asked how the Alberta government has done on her past recommendations.
A number of them are at ongoing states of progress, significant or some progress. Some have been met. I did see some good work involved with like this youth suicide strategy that was implemented, and so now I would like to see some follow-up on that. But I'm feeling positive about what's going on for the most part.
We will have community reaction to this story in the coming days. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Femicide surged in Quebec in 2020, taking the lives of 23 women that year. One of them was the murder of an Inuit woman, Mary Saviakchuk, in 2020. Her killer has yet to be sentenced because of delays in producing a GLADU report. It's just another example of how long families and victims have to wait for Nunavut's justice system in Northern Quebec. APTN Savannah Craig looks into what's contributing to those delays.
Mary Saviakchuk, a 37-year-old Inuk woman, was killed by her partner in Saluit, Nunavut on November 1st, 2020.
Mary was a really well-loved, well-respected member of her community in Saluit. She volunteered at the women's shelter in Saluit.
Laura Aguirre is the project coordinator of the Montreal-based organization Ishkwe. It has been supporting Saviakchuk's family through the murder trial. Ishkwe supports families and missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Unfortunately and very tragically, Mary was murdered on November 1st, 2020, in the context of intimate partner violence.
Her murderer, Pelusi Usuyatuk, received a second-degree murder sentence earlier this month. It normally means a 25-year sentence. But that length and when he can see a parole board have yet to be determined. That will happen at his next hearing on December 11th.
I would say that 4 years is quite a drawn-out legal process. And I think that there's two pieces. I think we see this often in cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, trans, and Two-Spirit people, but also the justice system in Nunavut, in Northern Quebec. It has extremely long delays.
A contributing factor to that is the shortage of GLADU writers. They are responsible for writing GLADU reports, which recognize the impacts of colonialism and intergenerational trauma when sentencing perpetrators who are Indigenous. GLADU writer Lynn St. Louis says it can be a lengthy process.
So altogether, it can take like a good, let's say, 35 hours.
The GLADU report in Saviakchuk's case was first ordered by the court on December 14th, 2023. And returned to the courts on October 28, 2024, more than 10 months after it was ordered.
One of the problem is recruiting GLADU writers, right? So I've been saying for, I think, 3 years that I'm done and I'm not going to do it anymore, but I still help because, there's a lack of writers.
APTN reached out to Makiavik, the legal representative of Inuit in Quebec. It did not respond to our multiple requests for comment.
You have this event that is extremely traumatic for families. Someone is murdered, someone has disappeared, sometimes a combination of both. And then because of our legal system and just the way it's not set up to support victims and their families, to protect victims and their families, as a result, yes, these failings are super common and then result in further traumatization for families.
Despite the delays in sentencing for Saviakjuk's murder, Ishkwe has kept her memory alive by calling for Instagram followers to leave candy out in her honor. That's because Halloween was Saviakjuk's favorite holiday. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
People from the Pipig First Nation in Saskatchewan are protesting today regarding a cows and plows settlement. That story when we come back. Plus, an investigation was launched into the federal and Quebec government's role in the killing of Inuit sled dogs in 1999. More than 20 years later, the federal government took accountability for their role in the slaughter. APTN's Savannah Craig will have the full story in our evening newscast. For now, here's a preview.
The federal government gave a historic apology for the RCMP's role in the killing of Inuit sled dogs between the 1950s and 1960s. Crown Indigenous Affairs Minister Gary Anandasangri gave this apology in Kungaksikiyuak, a community in Nunavik in Northern Quebec.
On behalf of the Government of Canada and all Canadians, I am sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive us. Isu magiyunai tuga mavu gut. This caused immense pain and trauma as Inuit lost their livelihood and endured immeasurable changes to their culture and society, which can still be felt to this day.
The killing of Inuit sled dogs pushed them into a sedentary lifestyle and took away part of their autonomy. This contributed to both a loss of culture and intergenerational trauma. Look out for the full report tonight on APTN National News. Savannah Craig, Kuujjuaq, Nunavik.
Welcome back. Tequatagamu, a Cree First Nation located within Treaty 9 in Ontario, has filed a statement of claim against the province of Ontario and Newmont, a mining company that owns properties in Timmins. Chief Bruce Archibald said treaty promises are not being upheld, and he's calling on the company and the province to work with them in managing the impacts of mining activities. CTV's Lydia Chubak reports.
Pamour Mine, located east of Timmins, is one reason why Tequatagamu Nation is taking the gold mining company and Ontario to court.
It's focused towards one mine right now, but, at the same time, with all the other operations that happen within the 101 corridor or within our traditional territory, we want to bring that to the forefront of all the activities that happened over the last 110 years when it comes to mining.
They simply did not consult about reopening Pamour, a new open pit mine that's going to do 156 million tons of waste rock.
In a statement to CTV News, Newmont wrote in part, Newmont began engaging with TTN for our Timmins operations in 2022, following the Ontario Ministry of Energy, Northern Development and Mines designation of TTN as requiring low-level consultation. Prior to this, Newmont's First Nations engagement focused on 4 other communities in the Timmins area that the government identified as directly impacted. Over the past year, Newmont has engaged in good faith to reach a meaningful and fair agreement with TTN. Newmont also said it's invested $160 million to establish a water treatment plant at the Pamour site. But Chief Archibald says the damages from mining operations to the environment have been going on for a long time, and the community wants what they say is proper compensation.
We did the study and actually submitted it to Ontario with the proof that we had existence and claim to the areas that are being mined right now. And still to this day, we still don't get the recognition or the acknowledgement that we deserve as a community.
Newmont, the Ministry of Mines, and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks were all served this week. The chief hopes this will bring all parties back to the table to negotiate a meaningful agreement for the community. In an email to CTV News, the province said it will respond to the action, but it would be inappropriate to comment further as the matter is before the courts. Lydia Chubak, CTV News, Timmins.
People of the Pipig First Nation in Saskatchewan are organizing what they call a peaceful protest to speak out against the band's Cows and Plows agreement. The protest will be held at 12 p.m. noon today at the Pipig First Nation-owned Creeland gas station in Regina. Some of the protesters' demands include a 100% payout, an election for trustee positions, independent legal advice, financial advice, and treaty advice on the matters, and they want Chief and Council to take part and listen. We'll bring you more on this in a later newscast. Now to Australia, where the number of Indigenous adults in New South Wales prisons has reached an all-time high, with First Nations inmates making up almost a third of the overall prison population. As the national Indigenous television broadcaster in Australia tells us, experts say the soaring remand rate of Indigenous prisoners is behind the significant spike in numbers.
Behind locked doors and under constant supervision.
What we can see with this most recent data is a really alarming increase in Aboriginal people in custody in New South Wales.
In the 12 months leading to September, the adult prison population rose by over 5%, and a record high 31.8% of these inmates are Indigenous. The driving factor is a spike in the number of Aboriginal people on remand. Experts say domestic violence-related offences are behind the increase.
More than half of the increase in remandees is due to an escalation in domestic violence remandees, and this is being driven by both an increase in charges but also an increase in the likelihood that people charged with a domestic violence offence will be remanded before their court matters.
Ms Fitzgerald says the higher remand rate is likely due to changes in process, not laws.
We've had a number of high-profile domestic violence incidents, some really shocking DV offences, and that seems to have translated into more severe bail decisions by magistrates in the local courts.
Some Indigenous legal specialists are also concerned that Aboriginal women are being treated unfairly.
Externally, we are seeing a lot more women in custody for domestic violence related offences, when in fact they are the primary victim of the domestic violence in that relationship. In the early days of the new coercive control laws, Warringah Bayer has expressed our concerns about this continued misidentification of Aboriginal women as the perpetrators.
Across the country, incarceration rates for Indigenous Australians are on the rise, prompting calls for better social services.
Investment in family support, housing, education, after-hours activities for young people and community services. If we're going to have communities who look like they're thriving, we've got to invest in the things that help that community thrive.
Over 15,000 Indigenous people are behind bars in Australia. Cameron Carr, NITV News.
And we now want to tell you about our web poll results from last week. Over on our website, we asked, how confident are you in the checks and balances when it comes to medical procedures at hospitals in your area? A majority at 47% said not confident, and 30% answered somewhat confident, 13% said very confident, and the rest were unsure at 10%. Next, we asked, do you feel you've ever been racially profiled while shopping? A majority had voted yes at 60%, with no being answered 31%, and 9% were unsure. And lastly, do you think body-worn cameras will improve trust between the RCMP and Indigenous peoples? Almost half said no at 49%, 29% said yes, and the rest at 22% were unsure. Thank you to everyone who voted, and we will have a new set of questions this week on our website at www.aptnnews.ca. Indigenous artist Casey Adams has created some new artwork at a gallery in Winnipeg. Sierra Bettens takes us on a tour when we come back in less than 3 minutes. Stay with us. Starting on the east, Charlottetown 5, St. John 7. Cartwright 3, Inuit -4. Gaspé 6, Val d'Or -2. 2 in Peterborough, Sault Ste. Marie -2. Wawa -3, Thunder Bay -1. -7 in God's Lake, Puckatawagan -13. -5 in Princess Harbour, Dauphin -12. -19 in Regina, Saskatoon -24. -16 La Ronge, Buffalo Narrows -23 in Sun. -19 in High Level, Peace River -13. -11 in Lethbridge, Red Deer -15. 5 in Campbell River, Bella Coola -2. -21 in Fort Nelson, Dees Lake, same temperature -21. -17 in Mayo, Dawson -18. -13 in Watee, Norman Wells -10. -20 in Tuktoyaktuk, Sax Harbor -20. Baker Lake -12, Cambridge Bay -14. And Iqaluit -18, Aglulik -15. A new exhibition by artist Casey Adams is creating a dialogue between past, present, and future generations. Reporter Sarah Bettens brings you to Adams' 7 Generations Gallery opening in Winnipeg.
In her latest exhibition, Cree, Anishinaabe, and English artist Casey Adams connects generations. Portraits of youth from Adams' community, the Fisher River Cree Nation, bring the walls to life.
She created the photos in 7 layers. So those 7 layers represent 7 generations, the concept of 7 generations.
The 7 Generations exhibition opened Thursday at the University of Winnipeg's Gallery 1C03. Adams created the portrait series titled We Are Still Here after the unmarked graves of 215 children were discovered at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. It features ancestor regalia loaned from the Manitoba Museum to connect past and present generations.
They're surrounded by regalia, actually, ancestor regalia, to really solidify that idea of looking to the ancestors. The ancestors, you know, have been dreaming of us, thinking about us in the present.
Nicole Patterson and her son Gibson Travers were featured in Adams' documentary, Relational Making. In the film, Adams interviews mothers of powwow dancers from the Fisher River Cree Nation about making regalia for their children.
I did make his outfit with a lot of help from community members, elders. His colors are incorporated into his outfit. I just finished this last night, so I was beating like a mad woman trying to finish his headpiece.
My colors are blue, yellow, red.
What's your spirit name?
Hunting bear.
While Adams could not attend the opening due to illness, her son Mac shared her words.
She is so grateful for this opportunity to showcase this beautiful work of the ancestors. This exhibition is a love letter to her community.
7 Generations is on display at the University of Winnipeg's Gallery 1C03 from now until February 14th. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday, November 25th. We'll be back again with your evening newscast in a few hours. Make sure to join us then. From everyone at APTN National News, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Excellent.